We can't hear you.
Karen, you're muted again, dear.
Karen, we can't hear you.
Let's try this again.
Okay.
Our gospel lesson is from Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 through 33. I'm reading in the Contemporary English Version. Peter came up to the Lord and asked, "How many times should I forgive someone who does something wrong to me? Is 7 times enough?" Jesus answered, "Not just 7 times, but 70 times 7. This story will show you what the kingdom of heaven is like." One day, a king decided to call in his servants and ask them to give an account of what they owed him. As he was doing this, one servant was brought in who owed him 50 million silver coins. But he didn't have any money to pay what he owed. The king ordered him to be sold along with his wife and children and all that he owned in order to pay the debt. The servant got down on his knees and began begging, "Have pity on me, and I will pay you every cent I owe." The king felt sorry for him and let him go free. He even told the servant that he did not have to pay back the money. As the servant was leaving, he happened to meet another servant who owed him 100 silver coins. So he grabbed the man by the throat. He started choking him and said, "Pay me what you owe." The man got down on his knees and began begging, "Have pity on me, and I will pay you back." But the first official refused to have pity. Instead, he went out and had the other official put in jail until he could pay what he owed. When some other servants found out what had happened, they were very distressed for the man who had been put in jail. Then they told the king what had happened. The king called the first servant back in and said, "You're an evil man. When you begged for mercy, I said you did not have to pay back a cent. Don't you think you should show pity to someone else as I did to you?"
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. So, I want to share with you a truth about me. If you don't know this already, I don't math. I just don't do math. I'm intimidated by numbers, so I don't math. but I did notice the numbers in this story, and I had my calculator help me do the math because these numbers seemed truly fantastical to me. And I wonder if you caught that. If you do the math, you will realize that Jesus just told Peter to forgive a brother or sister 490 times. That's what you get when you multiply 70 by 7. 490 times to forgive. And I have to say, who does this? Who counts like this? Do you count your opportunities to forgive or be forgiven? Keep them in a little tally sheet? Back pocket? Who does this sort of thing, anybody? Anyway, I, I, I think it's fantastical and surreal because I don't think we do this. And it's compounded in the story that Jesus tells next. He tells a story about a king and a servant, and the servant owed that king a fantastic amount of money. It's an unreal amount of money. In the ancient world, there was no such thing as a billion. The highest number you could even get to was 10,000 of anything. And in the Greek, they didn't even bother to use a number. They simply said myriads of money. This man owned owed the king myriads of money. But actually, in the story, Jesus says the man owed the king 10, excuse me, 10,000 talents. And get this, a talent was 15 years worth of wages for your average laborer. 15 years worth of work from one laborer, one talent. And this man owed the king 10,000 of them. Now, if you do the math for that, thank God for calculators, that is 150,000 years of one man's labor. This is crazy. These numbers are ridiculous. Yes? Yes? These are surreal. So what most scholars of this story tell us then about this absolutely fantastic set of numbers that Jesus is throwing out there in his stories is that Jesus was simply trying to tell people this was an impossible debt to repay. This man was trapped in unpayable debt. But if you look carefully, if you just get away from the bizarre numbers, the crazy, fantastic, exaggerated numbers for a moment, you really get to the heart of this story. The heart of the story is the forgiveness of the debt by the king. Look at what the king does. Listen to what happens with the king. Jesus says he has pity. He is merciful. He feels, has compassion for that pathetic man, that servant, that slave who is burdened by an impossible weight of debt. And he wipes it out. He doesn't calculate how much he's lost in the exchange with this particular servant. He lets it go. He chooses to forget what he is owed. He forgets what he is owed. Our reading today from Karen ended with the question, don't you think you should show pity as I have shown pity to you? He has stopped the calculation. But in our day and age, it's almost impossible to not be calculating, to not be consumed by the math. There's give and there's take. There's what is owed, there's what is paid off, there's what you are indebted for. And when you are debt-free, there's something bartered, something exchanged. There's gain and loss. And it is on every level in our society. Even when we receive a kindness, it's polite to say, I am indebted to you for your kindness. How many of us have received an invitation to dinner and then immediately replied with a card or responded in kind with another invitation to dinner so that you won't be indebted to them for that meal? Everything is squared away when you have had them over after they've had you over, and no one is indebted to anyone. Are you familiar with this world that we live in? Gain and loss, back and forth. It's also the world that Jesus knew. very well. His world of patronage and power plays, a world where it was very clear that if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's a world where we know bribery was an art, and buying and selling and keeping tabs and keeping score and getting ahead or losing ground was active in every aspect of society, in the religious culture, in the political culture, in social interactions. His world and our world really are not so very different, are they? But remember, the highlight of this story is that the debt is forgiven. It seems to me that what Jesus is saying is mercy is everything. Mercy, pity, is generous. It doesn't count. It doesn't keep score. And so whatever you are doing, whenever you are keeping score, it's not forgiveness. It's not open-hearted. It's not pity, generosity, or mercy. Whatever you're doing when you do let go, when you open your heart and you open your hands and you open your wallet and you're not keeping score and you're not keeping count, no matter how fantastical the numbers seem to those around you, whatever you are doing then, it seems to me that Jesus is saying what you are doing is godlike. And I believe in this there is freedom. When you and I let go of our sense of being indebted or being owed, of being wronged and needing something to be righted, when we let go of that, there's freedom in the letting go. Are you familiar with this feeling? Have you done this? Try it. Try it sometime. Let go of a resentment or a grudge. Set your mind to let it go. Stop carrying it. Let go of a financial stressor too. Try that. Quiet the worried voice. Quiet the preoccupation with the worry about that account, that investment, that retirement fund. Let that burden go. And I believe you will literally feel different in your body. You will literally feel different in your spirit. You will feel lighter. And you know, I think this is a God-like feeling. It's a God feeling. We've been told we're made in the image and likeness of God, and I infer that God knows this feeling of lightness fully and immensely. God, in fact, is full of lightness and joy and pity and mercy and that vast freedom of not clinging to indebtedness. I think Peter is trying to invite Peter, or Jesus is trying to invite Peter into that kind of freedom. To feel the joy that you have in being merciful. To feel the lightness you get when you forgive. to know an open heart because you have compassion. I believe that we trap ourselves. We bind ourselves again and again and again. We weigh ourselves down. We burden ourselves with unhappiness because we cling. We cling to that which we should let go of. And the gospel stories of Jesus are trying to give us freedom, trying to give us compassion and lightness and hope. Sometimes we hear Jesus' stories and they're about a healing or a relationship that is restored, a hunger that is satisfied. But these are the stories that Jesus is telling to invite us into freedom, joy, compassion, love, lightness. From God to us through Jesus. From Jesus to us to the world. The gift of freedom. The gift of mercy. The promise of peace. I'm not going to lie to all of you and say that this is not hard work. I think it is. Because if you're anything like me, you sometimes cling to that hurt. And we sometimes nurse our resentments. We are so certain of our innocence and so certain of someone else's sense of wrong. And what Jesus is inviting us to do is let go of that heavy burden. Put it down. Let it go. All those fantastic numbers. How much to forgive? How much is owed? Let all those numbers go. Jesus tells us, for pity's sake, for the love of God, stop counting. Amen.